either want to be filthy rich or flat broke. I feel like slavery's in between. And I said to my brother when we had no money, let's just move to Thailand. Let's just move to Thailand and fight and just live on $50 a day and just run around on the beach and have our time back. Like, what are we slaving away a job to pay the rent and then we're broke? I'd rather be, I either have to feel like I'm going to make it or just quit capitalism.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in between. And my father was the same. So he won a chess tournament, a low level one. He made like $3,000 or something. And he said, listen, son, the rent's paid and I either want 100 grand or nothing. It's just who I am. So we went to the casino, lost all the money. The casino's a bad place to go and try to get rich, but that's my dad. Lost all the money. So then we were in Detroit and we were hustling in a park. My dad was a chess park hustler. He'd go into the parks and he'd sit down and say, you all get 10 minutes. I get a minute on the clock. And he'd play 10 games simultaneously while they all had 10 minutes each. And he'd have a minute. And he'd sit there and just smoke them all for money, right? And take all the money in. So, and we'll talk about world level chess players because I'll make it clear. I do not have the intellect to be a world level chess player. Even though I have the genetics, it's something you're born with. It's kind of like being a human calculator. It's something in your brain. You can't train. It's like learning to sing. You can learn to sing, but you're not going to be Mariah Carey unless you're born with it, right? The way his mind worked was a different level of intellect, and I don't possess it. And that's a blessing and a curse because I'm better socially than he was. He was not very sociable as a person. And in these high-level chess tournaments, a lot of them are not very sociable people. And we can talk about that at length, but so he made some money. We went to a gas station in Detroit, and I remember this vividly. I was about 8 or 9 years old. I went to the back, to the coolers. I opened to get a drink, and I heard all this noise. And when I turned around, my dad was fighting 3 men. And I don't know how the fight started. I don't know where it came from. He had one of them up against the door, and he had him up like this, and he was biting his face. And the other 2 are punching my dad in the back of the head. And I'm a kid. And I just stood there like, the fuck? And the Korean guy behind is shouting, stop, 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 stop. And I'm standing there. And I didn't know what to do. So I kind of went to walk over. And although my dad was getting punched, although he was biting this guy, I remember him turning to me and saying, stay there. And went back to biting the guy. I don't know what the fuck. To this day, I don't know how the fight started. Korean guy came around the back, kind of got in the middle. The guys went out. They threatened to kill him. We're going to fucking kill you like gangbangers. We're going to fucking kill you. We're gonna fucking kill you. My dad had blood all over his face, some from the guy, some from him. His eye was black. His eye socket got fractured. His eye was closed. His bumps all back to head. So we stood there and the Korean guy started panicking, saying, my store damaged, my store, wait, police, wait, police, wait, police. And I think my dad was a bit disoriented. He never went down, but I could tell he was a bit dizzy. So my dad stood there and he stood like this, like in like military position, stood in the corner of the place and waited for the police officer to come. And the police officer came and start doing reports, asked what happened, start talking to reports, etc. And the police officer said to my dad, so you fought these 3 guys. He goes, okay, well, what's your job? My dad said, I'm a chess player. And the police officer said, well, maybe you should have been something else. And my dad said, my unmatched perspicacity, coupled with sheer indefatigability, makes me a feared opponent in any realm of human endeavor. I remember him saying that was his answer to the police officer. And the police officer was like,
yeah, how do you spell perspicacity?
Okay, bro.
Unfatigability.
He wrote it down.
Yeah.
And that was a saying that my dad started using then on after, and I adopted. So that's the only time I ever saw him fight. And he didn't win. I mean, the guy got fucked up, but he didn't go down. I mean, he dealt with all 3 of them, and they left in the end. The individual has to receive it. And also, but I think the modern world's changed because there's a lot more opposite programming to your parents than there used to be. I used to go to school, finish school, come home, play chess. I was never really allowed to really watch too much TV. I didn't play Nintendo too much. I played chess. That was it. That's all I really did. So besides the school teacher or the little bit of school I had, I didn't have too much outside programming from the matrix itself. But nowadays, when you're raising a child, it's far more scary because you're trying to teach them things. That's fine. But YouTube's trying to teach them something else. And Netflix trying to teach them something else. And school is trying to teach them something else more than ever before. And on top of that, if you're not a wealthy individual, your wife now has to go to work, right? Because you have 2 incomes to pay the bills. So your children are not even at home with the mother or the woman who adopts with your ideals, because otherwise you wouldn't be together. Now they belong to the state effectively in many different ways. The school raises them, then an aftercare program, then internet raises them. So now you have a very difficult job. And you'll see, even if you look at YouTube now, children disagreeing with their own parents about certain issues, no matter what they are. Some topical issues, politics, LGBT, whatever, the parents will say, no, that's not true. Well, I heard in school it's true, because they spend more time inside the matrix than they do with their own parents now. And it's very, very difficult now as a parent to get that hard time with your kid and say, resist that. I want you to be this way. It was easier when I was raised. Now that's scary. I think it's a very, very difficult job parents have now because of that. because the programming is exceptionally strong because it's entertaining, right? And we've all developed ADHD and we're all glued to social media and addicted to our phones, and things are coming through the phone. And that's the argument they tried to use to ban me. I argue that I'm a positive force and there's far more negative forces than me on the internet, which are trying to infect the children than I am. That's the argument I have. I'd argue that I'm the complete opposite to it. But no, my father certainly not really had rage. My father was a super unique individual. It's hard for me to even explain. You have to imagine a big black guy, big physically dominating, dangerous guy who's a chess genius, but also he was extremely condescending, but I understand why he was the way he was. When you're wired like he is, everyone is a moron. And when I say he had photographic memory, everyone goes, oh, I know someone's photographic memory. No, you don't. I'm talking about, what's your phone number? So, cool. 6 years later, just on a payphone. Like, it's like, how the fuck? Just everything you told him, he remembered. Everything. And that becomes a detriment, because if you remember and you pay attention, if you remember every number plate of every car around you, then you're in a car with the guy and he's like, last Thursday, that car was beside us. Dad, was it? I don't know. Of course you don't know. You don't know, but I do know. That car was beside us next Thursday. Do you believe in coincidences? It's like, well, maybe it is a coincidence. He goes, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then you can't argue with him because you don't know if he's like, well, you're not smart enough to remember all the number plates, son. So you just leave this to fucking me. And then you turn off the road because this dude might be following you. And I'm not saying he was paranoid, but I'm saying the world he lived in was a scary world, if that makes sense. Because he remembered everything all the time. And it also means you can't really function in society because you can't have a job. You can't listen to anybody. You can't socialize with anybody because everyone's a fucking moron. So he had my father got diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And I do believe he had it, and people say I have it, but I don't. When you have true narcissistic personality disorder, you truly believe you're almost invincible. Does that make sense? Like, guns were pulled on him and you go, you think that's going to kill me? Shoot me, you fight. And you get furious. Like, how dare you believe a weapon can kill him? He was fucking enraged. Like, that's who he was. So yeah, he was a super interesting guy to grow up around, because it's weird to be around a dude who's so big and so strong and also so smart, and you have to just accept second place all the time. And then you're arguing about number plates on some fucking Corolla from Thursday. And it's like, so how did you? Once you get past a certain number of million, life's the same. What are you gonna buy? How many steaks can you eat? Like, I don't gamble. I don't take drugs. Like, you eat, vodka's cheap. I have my house. I have 27 cars. There ain't nothing to buy. I have diamond watches. I'm really, although I talk about making money and I talk like I'm a money-oriented person, I do that because you cannot truly escape from the matrix if you're poor, because they use that as a control mechanism against you. But once you get past that, it doesn't matter if you have 50 million or 75 million. Your life's the same. 400 million, your life's the same. I don't need more money. It's not interesting to me. What's interesting to me is living a life that's true to God. I like being able to go to sleep at night knowing I'm happy with myself and who I am. I like knowing the things I say on podcasts are a good, genuine influence on the world. I like if something bad happens to me, which happens to everybody, I can go to sleep knowing that karma is going to reward me because I'm a positive influence. I don't need to sell my soul for money. This is the thing that Logan does not yet understand. He still thinks selling his soul's worth it. It's not worth it for money. I don't need money. It's not about money for me on any level. It never will be. So I do believe saint status is coming. You have a very, very powerful point. And also, this is why you have a level of power control I don't yet have, right? You have a certain status and power, you're right, that I don't yet have. But I do certainly not really believe it's coming just because of the feedback I've had. It's been absolutely monumental. On the day of my banning, I got 94,000 emails. 94,000 people took time out of their life to just email me support. It's insane. It's insane. They haven't tricked anybody.
Never know.
But this is the thing that's interesting, because the feminist narrative, when I say things like the male pilot, for example, the feminist narrative is that I'm a controlling man who wants control over women. The actual truth is I'm a protective man who wants to protect. And being a man in a position of protecting is not always a good thing. I feel indebted and have a duty to myself and my honor, meaning that if I'm walking down the street with a beautiful woman and 3 men want to attack her, I have to risk my life now. I can't live my life letting my wife get gang raped on a fucking street and running away. I can't take it as a man. So I have to now die. I have to die or try. I have no choice. So that's my duty. But they'll ignore that part. They'll ignore the part where I risk my life, right? And they'll say, oh, but you just want to be controlling, misogynistic. No. I have a duty to protect. I'm calmer under pressure because I've been in more unfortunate situations. I've had more trauma in my life, which has trained me to be more calm under pressure. I would hate to meet a woman who's been through as much trauma as I have. That's not the kind of, that wouldn't make her a good woman. I don't think women need trauma at that level. I don't want women who've been stabbed. There's no need for that. But I have been through it. So I think that in my experience, extrapolation, that men who are successful, a lot of them have been through enough for me to trust them more in a high pressure situation. And like I said, this comes with massive responsibility. This comes with massive detriments and downsides, right? And the feminists are like, no, you're controlling. It's not about controlling. It's about duty. There was no feminist on the Titanic. Then men can die. There's no feminist to this day in Ukraine. The Ukrainian women can leave. You'll see them partying in Warsaw and Prague. Ukrainian men can't leave the country. They're dying in a ditch. They have to stay and fight. Not a single feminist is demanding that the women stay and fight. Not a single one. They don't give a fuck when it turns real. Once it turns hot, then it's woohoo, straight to, what do you want, sandwich? Sure. Well, what do you want, sandwich, sir? What do you need? Then it all goes back. The closer you are to the real world, the closer people instantly get into their gender roles, because otherwise they get annihilated in real time. That's another thing I said when I was getting called misogynistic and I was arguing with feminists. I said, traditionally, men are the leaders. And in ancient societies, men were in charge. That's because men are oppressive. You've oppressed us forever. That's their narrative. Their narrative is that we've oppressed women forever. I said, no, we've protected and provided for you forever. The reason we are leaders is because if we align with our gender roles, a man's more likely to lead, and that gives us a more competitive chance. In the olden world, where all the empires were currently fighting, if you're not as competitive as possible, you're going to be annihilated. I would argue that perhaps there were some civilizations where women were in charge. But we don't know who they are, and we can't discuss their history because they were fucking annihilated in real time by the ones where the men were in charge. Because you are hyper-competitive. You're at your optimum when men are in charge. That's just the optimum of the gender roles. That's the way it works. I don't believe we've been oppressing you since the dawn of human time. I disagree. I believe we've been working hard, protecting, providing for you. If men were truly oppressive to women, why don't we send the women to war? Women on women, it's fair, right? We can send all the women to war in Ukraine, all the women to war in Russia. They can die, and we can sit and we can chill and we can go to Warsaw and drink vodka. We don't do that. The men of Ukraine and the men of Russia are dying to protect their women. And then they want to sit and say that we're bad? It's a completely skewed worldview. Whenever they come along and say that we're oppressive and that we have the most money and all this bullshit, it's a lie. We are going out of our way and giving up our lives to protect and provide. And this is where it comes to some of the other things that they said against me. I've said, a man has a degree of authority over something he has responsibility for. They took this and they used it and said that I think that men have authority over women. It's not what I said. I said, if I have responsibility for something, I must have a degree of authority over that thing. If I have a car, if for it to be parked in the wrong place or for me to drive too fast, whatever, for me to be responsible for the actions of that car, it must be my car. If it's parked in the wrong place, but it's not mine and I'm not allowed to drive it, then I'm not held accountable. For me to be accountable, I have to have responsibility. By extension, that gives me a degree of authority. So what I was saying is, if a woman comes to me and lives with me and I pay the bills and she travels the world with me and she flies on jets and we go to boats and she's taken care of, I'm responsible for her safety if we walk the street at night. I ensure her life is in perfect order. I have a degree of authority where I can say, you're not going to go out at night by yourself. It's dangerous. Or we're not going to go to this country right now. It's dangerous. That's a degree of authority that I have that comes with my responsibility from a protective manner. That does not mean I am oppressive. That does not mean I'm misogynistic. It just means that responsibility and accountability are linked and they can't be decoupled. A captain goes down with the ship because the captain is responsible for what happens on the ship. If the captain gives orders and everyone ignores him, then he doesn't go down with the ship, does he? He has authority because he is responsible. The two things are the same. And once again, people have misunderstood what I've said. And that's what I said. In a healthy relationship, perhaps in my relationships, let's talk from a personal perspective because then I can't be attacked. In my relationships, I am responsible for the emotional security and for the physical security and the fiscal responsibility, the fiscal security of any woman I'm with. And by extension, I have a degree of authority over her to make sure that we as a couple proceed and progress in the best possible way. It's not going to be 50-50 if I'm in charge of the most important things. It's going to be like, listen, I love you very much. I respect what you're saying, and you're totally right about this. But on this one point, I'm sorry, I'm going to be the man. We're doing it this way. The combination of both, I think it's certainly on him to earn it, but also the matrix programming is counter to him. The matrix programming is trying to tell him that he shouldn't be allowed to be the man of the house, that he shouldn't be allowed to have any kind of authority in any regard. You shouldn't be allowed to be able to say what happens. The matrix programming is saying the absolute opposite all the time. And if that's getting into your woman and you don't have that much influence, and that's getting into all your children, you don't have that much influence, now you're coming home to a household where everyone just thinks you're the dude who should just fucking work. You're just a worker droid. You're the slave. You're the robot. And your feelings don't matter and your authority doesn't matter, and get fucked. And this is very conscious. If you watch any Netflix show, the mother is the smart one and the man is the bumbling idiot. Turn on a show. I dare you, turn on a family show. The mother is the one, hey, calm down, I'm smart. And the man's the like, oh, beer. Watch any of these shows. They're trying,
Guy, the Simpsons, Married with Children.
Any of it. All of it. They're reducing the man to just a bumbling idiot. And it's very hard, I think, for a lot of men to accept being in a position of constant disrespect. I'll tell you this now. If I had to choose a long-lasting marriage with a woman who loved me or a woman who truly respected me, I might choose respect over love. Even though they're the same thing for a woman, because she loves you, she respects you by default. But if I had to choose, I'd choose respect. I've been through too much and worked too hard and go through too much in day-to-day life to come home to my house and be having battles over asinine bullshit. I take care of you and I love you with all of my heart. I would die for you. If someone broke into this house, I would engage the invader and die. Please just cook dinner, please. What do you want from me? What more can I do for you? And once they feel disrespected, this is another thing about the world that a lot of people don't understand. It's disrespect that will drive a man to the most heinous of crimes. It's disrespect that starts the school shooter bullshit. It's disrespect that makes men go to jail for life sentences. It's disrespect. When you truly disrespect a man in a public and permanent way, that's when they switch. That's why I'm so respectful in public. You don't know who the fuck you're talking to. He might be on his last fucking straw. And you just disrespected, hey, you're a fucking bitch anyway, you're skinny motherfucker, fuck you. You don't know, that might be the last time he heard it. I've had enough. You don't know. Disrespect is dangerous, right? And in a household where you're constantly disrespecting a man, he's gonna end up depressed and sad for even accepting it. Men just wanna feel respected. It's not that hard to do. If you truly, I say to anyone watching this, if you truly love your man, it would be so easy for you to just make him feel respected. It doesn't even take actions. You can do it with basic words. Ask his opinion on something, big him up once in a while. And because we're supposed to be supermen and we purport ourselves as supermen and we're stoic, but we talked earlier about how we still feel everything. So when you're a strong man, especially, they're like, he's fine. He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. Be nice to the dude. You'd be surprised how far you get. But this is why I think most men walk out of marriages, because they're like, you know what? I'm not getting any respect here. I get more respect from this dickhead stripper, 18-year-old hoe, for throwing money at her than I do giving money to my own wife. Where am I being respected? Well, at least she's smiling at me. She ain't smiled at me in years. And it gets to a point where it's just like, well, I want to feel respected now. I'm working my ass off. I'm out here on the streets. I'm going to the sewers and shit. Where's my respect at? And that's what I think it really comes down to. I think men function on respect. And respect is the number one trigger that'll make a man do heinous crimes. And it's also the thing that will make us do the bravest, most honorable things. What did I say about protecting my wife from trying to rape her in a situation on the street? I can't respect myself, and I won't be respected by society if I don't die. So I will stand and die. I can't say, oh, there's 3 of them. I can't do it because my self-respect and respect of the world, nah, that's Tate's girl and he ran away. I can't take it. I have to die. I can't live that way. So it's like honor. It's like Hirokari, or what about the Japanese thing with the sword? You can't take the dishonor of losing. Absolutely, they commit suicide. So respect is so intrinsic to men, and a lot of society's forgotten this, and that's why I also think my
God is going to test you, and he's going to see if you really are the man you say you are. It's easy to say you're a tough guy, then God's going to put you in a position where you get a chance to prove you're a tough guy. I didn't miss a single day's training. I did not miss a single day's push-ups in that cell. I wasn't too depressed to train. I wasn't too sad to train, too anxious to train, too frustrated to train. I trained endlessly every single day. And it's interesting you talk about movies, because it's true. Every single hero in every single movie goes through adversity. There's never been a hero movie where all he does is win. No, to be a hero, you have to suffer. And this can be extrapolated out, not just about my life, but about all men out there. If you're suffering in some degree, even if you're a normal guy with a normal job and you're suffering at your job, or you've had your heart broken because your girl left you, or whatever, if you're suffering, that's part of your hero's journey. There is no hero's journey without suffering. If you have an easy life the whole way through, you never get to be a hero. That's the whole point of being a man, is that you're supposed to suffer. You're supposed to eat pain for breakfast. You're supposed to come and grow into a better version of yourself. That's exactly what life's supposed to be about as a man. And another thing I want to say, when you mentioned that movie that popped to my head, I find it amazing that men will sit and watch movies about prisoners of war in Japan, or watch movies about men who go to war and risk their lives, or watch all these hero movies, and they have admiration for the hero, and they believe themselves to be some version of a hero, and then they're too afraid to say no to putting on a mask. If you're not going to say no to putting on a mask, don't watch hero movies anymore. Because you're certainly not a hero. You are one of the villains. You're not even one of the important villains. You're not even one of the villains with a name. You're the stupid little henchmen who get beaten up. Those guys who are on screen for a flash of a second and die without consequence. Nobody even cares or mentions them again. Their family don't even get to give them a funeral. They're nobodies. You're a nobody villain. You're not even an important one. The important villains, we know their names. You're a number. You're not a name. If you're going to watch superhero movies, don't put a mask on your fucking face. And if you want to be a superhero in life, you need to understand that for 80% of the movie, you're going to suffer. For 80% of the movie, you're going to lose. Watch any superhero movie. For 80% of the movie, it is nothing but pain and frustration and difficulty. And when your life is that way, you have a chance to grow into something fantastic, and you should thank God for every difficult thing he puts in your path. Yeah, so I knew the guards were watching me, and I'm stubborn, and I believe that every time I did push-ups and they saw me doing them, I believed in my heart it annoyed them. And I am a very stubborn man because they wanted me to be sad and broken. But every time they saw me, I was sweating and training. And every single time they'd check, they saw nothing but a lion who refused to stop doing push-ups. And they didn't want to do push-ups. They were too lazy. They're sitting around. They're the guards. They're not doing anything. And every single time they checked me for weeks and weeks and weeks, all I did was train. And I found the motivation to do it by knowing that it bothered them that I refused to quit. I'm stubborn like that. And I don't even know if it's true. All I know is that I can adopt a mental model which makes me as competitive as possible, and I decided my push-ups bothered them, and they were the ones who were keeping me locked in a room, so I will do push-ups at them. I didn't do push-ups for me. I did push-ups at them endlessly. If I was awake, I was doing push-ups, or I was resting, preparing for my next set at them. It was my only weapon of defiance. A man is unfairly imprisoned in a Romanian jail cell and trained so hard he emerges stronger than ever before. That is a movie. You get to live a movie as a man if all you had was some balls. Even you, think about your movie. You're literally saving the world, predicting the future. Our movies, I'm the most Googled man alive. We are living movie scripts. Why? Because we have bravery. Most men sit there and wonder why they're depressed because you don't get to live a movie. You're not the main character of anything. You're not even a secondary character in anyone else's movie. You're an unimportant nobody because you were afraid your entire life. You've lived like a coward your whole life. You were afraid of what might happen if you have some balls. And then you wonder why you're depressed. I'd be depressed if I was you. Of course, your life sucks. I'd rather go to jail as me than live free as you, because when you're free, you can't even do anything. You can't go where you want. You're broke. You can't have sex. Girls don't want you. You can't speak because no one listens. So what are you free to do? You're more in jail than I ever was. When I was in jail, I was getting thousands of love letters from beautiful women around the world. Every single tweet I put out was watched by millions of people. I wasn't in jail. You're more in jail than I ever was. When I was in jail, I was getting thousands of love letters from beautiful women around the world. Every single tweet I put out was watched by millions of people. I wasn't in jail. 50 to 100 million people, exactly. Most of these people who have lived with cowardice in an attempt to preserve their freedom aren't even free. And that's what they don't understand. They're enslaved worse than I ever have been or ever will be. My mind is free. I'm allowed to think what I want to think and say what I want to say. They have thoughts and they go, don't know if I should say that. They second guess themselves. They're their own worst enemy. Every single part of me is on my team. I have enemies who want me dead. Fine. But every single part of me, my mind, my hands, my legs, every single part of me is on my team. My body doesn't second guess itself. My mind doesn't turn on itself. We don't break and self-sabotage. There's no civil wars inside of Andrew Tate. All of us against you. All of us. Well, absolutely it's backfiring, because that's the worst thing you do to a teenage boy, say, don't watch this man. And the thing that they don't understand, because these people are so disconnected from reality. All of these people are genuinely disconnected. They don't understand that my message makes people feel better. I teach men to be strong. I teach men how to make money. I teach men how to be confident, how to be motivated, how to be disciplined, how to be diligent, how to be hardworking. If a man adopts these qualities and applies them to his life will get better. This isn't a matter of just consuming content on the internet. This is a matter of people's lives genuinely changing their day-to-day reality. If that happens, if somebody's day-to-day reality changes because they're a fan of me and they listen to my content, who do you think you are to come along and tell them to stop and go back to misery? It's never going to work. It's never going to work. And the reason I'm so heavily demonized is not because the things I say It's because I am so massively influential. And when I'm teaching these young men, these young boys to have any degree of standard for themselves, any degree of parameter for what they will accept inside of their minds, they see that as a threat to the slave programming. If a man stands up for himself and has self-respect, he doesn't want to wear a mask because he respects himself. He doesn't want to take antidepressants. He respects himself. He doesn't want to eat the bugs. He respects himself. They don't want men to have self-respect. We're not allowed to have self-respect. We have to sit there and be completely empty vessels waiting for the slave programming to be plugged in, so we'll comply. That's all they want is compliance. And that's why me, as a man who stands up and says, listen, you should become as strong as possible. You should believe in yourself. You should be motivated. And you should also try to make as much money as possible, because money is a very important weapon in the fight against slavery. I am seen as public enemy number one for genuinely improving people's lives. That's how evil these people are. Absolutely. Strong men make women happy. I get called a misogynist all the time for telling men to have standards. Men with standards and principle and capability and competence make women happy. The number one way to improve female mental health is to make men better men. And the reason they don't want men to be strong and have any kind of control over their relationships or their households is very simple. Females are easier to sway with an emotional argument. If you have a bunch of households which are run by women and the woman is in charge, and then the woman is going to sit and watch an emotional argument, propaganda, which is all that the MSM use. They can't use logical arguments, so they use emotional ones. Put the mask on for grandma. Well, grandma's 98, and 98-year-olds unfortunately die of diseases. And telling a 6-year-old kid to put a mask on, or a 21-year-old strong man to put a mask on because 98-year-old grandma might get sick, doesn't even make any logical sense. But it's an emotional argument, and women fall for emotional arguments easier than men. So how do you control a populace? It's very simple. You subdue the men, you make the women in charge, you make a matriarchy, and then you use emotional arguments via the propaganda mechanisms, because women are more likely to agree with them, and then you have the entire population under control. That's why it's done on purpose. They don't want a man to have any degree of control over anything in his life. Even his own house. You can't even be the king of your own household anymore. And it's making women miserable. It's making men miserable. It makes the entire populace miserable. And there's another thing I want people to understand. Misery is also a very key component to their slave agenda. Because when you're truly miserable, you are selfish. You don't care about anything that happens outside of yourself. People say that you and I perhaps were angry people, but I'll tell you something. We're positive people because we care. We care about what happens to our country. We care about what happens to our cities. We care about what happens to the future for our children. When you're truly miserable and truly sad, you're self-obsessed. You don't care about anything but yourself. They want us all miserable on antidepressants, eating the bugs, watching the TV shows. Because then when something happens down the street that's not supposed to happen, we don't care. Oh, yeah, well, the store down the street got robbed and my town's on fire, but I'm sad anyway. They want us all selfish, because when we're selfish, you can't band together to resist anything. It's a good question, and they are the end result of a very sophisticated propaganda machine which has been built with the sole intention of creating miserable drones which will believe anything they are told. These people can be told the sky is green and they'll believe it. And all of the propaganda which is being pumped their way is negative. The world is going to end because the sun is hot. Don't have kids, that's bad for some reason. Don't eat meat, only eat the bugs. Sit at home. You should have a therapist. You should be on antidepressants. Like, they're just trying to pump nothing but negativity of these people, and they absorb it. And this is what I said to one of my friends. My friend said, Andrew, you've been through so much for telling the truth. Why do you do it? And I say, well, you either fight against the injustice and tell the truth, and you suffer the consequences of that, or you believe the bullshit and suffer the consequences of being at war with your own mind and your own biology and end up miserable anyway. There is a war that cannot be escaped, and I would rather live true to God and tell the truth and fight the war this way. But it's truly incredible that these leftists do what they do. And I also think there's something that global about the world that most people don't understand. The people who are in charge of the planet, who are in charge of global finance, make all the important decisions, and who are in charge of money, they are called globalists for a reason. They have no particular interest in any one country. All they care about is control and maximizing profits. And I don't think many people understand that. For a long time, we've been exploiting the second and third worlds because someone has to lose for another person to win. There's no light without dark. We've been exploiting the second and third worlds for a long time to be prosperous in the West, and that's now changing for a variety of reasons, which will be a very long conversation. But the globalists have no problem exploiting the first world and simply turning it on its head, destroying the societies of America, destroying the societies of Europe, doing whatever they need to do to make endless and forever profit, and they'll simply move to a penthouse in another part of the world. They have no problem to move to Africa, or they have no problem moving to the Middle East. They have no problem to live in Asia. As long as they get forever profits and billions of dollars, they'll let Europe burn. And all of these leftist policies are designed to create a slave class of people which have no interest in trying to preserve the sanctity of the nations they live within.